Hello and welcome to our regular weekly update for ALBA members and supporters. It was slightly later than normal this week. That's because I didn't want to clash with the Netherlands for Scottish Independence and the Germans for Yes rally that many of us were participating in on Saturday. But nonetheless, there's three pieces of important news that ALBA members and supporters should know about. All good news, but changed a wee bit in some of our arrangements. And the first of these is for our annual conference. As you know, we'd intended the 18th and 19th September, but the surge in ALBA membership, about 400 over the last couple of weeks, means that we're slightly worried that the venue we had booked is not big enough for our requirements. And therefore we're going to move up the conference hall, perhaps to seat 600, perhaps even 700, because that seems to be the sort of numbers we're indicating they're wanting to attend. And therefore we've done a booking on that basis, but we can't get the 18th and 19th September now. We're going to have to move, I think, to the 11th and 12th September. Now by the next broadcast we should have definite news, but the conference is intended to take place and it's intended to be a physical conference, COVID regulations permitting, and that's going to be the mid-September, and we'll give you definite news about that in the next week or so. But it's a good thing that membership is increasing. Therefore, it's a good thing we're having to rebook the conference hall. And let me remind you that everybody who signs up for ALBA by the end of June will be treated as a founder member of the party with a founder members pack and various paraphernalia that's all being planned. And that mailing is designed to go out to everybody in the first week of July. So those supporters who are watching this, if you haven't joined up yet, and a number of our financial supporters still haven't joined the party, so this is your opportunity to transfer into membership, become a founder member of ALBA, Scotland's fastest growing political party, and the political party has to rebook its conference halls to accommodate the anticipated number of delegates. More news about that in next week's broadcast. The second piece of information is a number of party appointments I've made, all on an interim basis, pending their conference, which will elect the executive and the office bearers and so on and so forth. Firstly, we've now recognised 13 councillors as officially ALBA councillors in council groups around Scotland. And I've asked Lynn Anderson and Caroline McAllister, both experienced councillors, to coordinate that ALBA group so that our councillors around Scotland get a flow of information on local authority, and they can give a flow back to ALBA on some of the big issues affecting the party and the people at local authority level. So Lynn and Caroline are taking that forward. Secondly, I've asked Christopher McElhenney, also Councillor Chris McElhenney I should say, to be proper about these things, to act as General Secretary from now until the conference. A great number of administrative jobs to be done in terms of direction, to establish the party's organisation, to finalise the election expenses, to get our staff complement up and running. Obviously we are going to be a party with a smaller staff base than some of our rivals, but we think it's going to be a more efficient one, and it has to be one that we can command in terms of the income streams for the party. But that's being done, and Chris is bringing forward his recommendation and proposals, and also of course to establish, crucially, the party organisation, which is going to be done on a local authority basis. We intend to set up not some vast bureaucracy, but campaign units based on local authority areas. And that's already happening, as some of you watching this broadcast will know because you've been part of the meetings. But I've done South Ayrshire and East Ayrshire. ALBA campaign units have been established this week. I know that East Lothian have done the same thing. I'm addressing the Aberdeenshire ALBA campaign unit on Sunday, and I know that Kenny McCaskill is doing Aberdeen City on Tuesday. Now there may be other ones across Scotland, but we'll have an update from Chris himself in one of our upcoming broadcasts. Will tell you how that campaign structure is coming into place. And obviously it'll be to our great advantage if we have all of these local active campaign ALBA units, because ALBA is the campaign for Scottish independence up and running by the annual conference. That's certainly our target. In terms of other appointments, I've asked Corey Wilson, the former Member of Parliament, to do a really important job as the membership convener. Now, we already recognise in our ALBA membership of 5,500 now, an incredibly active membership with an extraordinary skill base. And Corey is running a skills audit of the membership at the present moment. And don't worry, all of these addresses and contact details will be featured at the end of this broadcast. But we've got exceptional skills within our member base, and people who wish to be active either in policy formulation or supporting our online efforts, or a whole variety of other specialisms. And Corey is mobilising that talent base we have within ALBA to make sure that people can put their shoulders to the wheel and shove the fastest growing political party in Scotland forward at a great rate of knots. I can also report that Neil Hanvey and Kenny McCaskill are now officially an ALBA Westminster Parliamentary Group and recognised as such. Those of you who watch the parliamentary broadcast will see Neil and Kenny speaking with the ALBA signature underneath their names now. And they've asked Jim Eadie, the former MSP and ALBA candidate of course, to be their point person at Westminster. So Jim will be taking forward that job in the next few weeks. So that's a range of appointments that I've made, all to get us up and running in time for the conference when the party will elect its own executive and office bearers. I should say that there's also a half a dozen or so affiliated groups who are applying for recognition, and I think they're extensive enough to come as news in a future broadcast, so I will be outlining that very, very shortly. And the last thing I want to do is just reflect on one aspect of politics over the last week. I mean, it's been a particularly interesting week. It's shown the total chaos and confusion that reigned in the Westminster, in the bowels of Westminster, in the Westminster bunker, as Dominic Cummings has outlined in a fairly devastating fashion. And it should make people reflect. If that is a genuine insight into the way Scotland is governed at the present moment, and there's no reason to suppose it's not, then why on earth would we trust this gang of incompetents with running anything else about Scotland? If that's how they run the first devastatingly major pandemic for a century, then what are they doing to the rest of the country in terms of the range of social and economic policies? It's a devastating insight, and one that should undermine confidence in the competence and the legitimacy and authority of Westminster government. But I was also interested in another piece of news, and that was the decision of our future monarch but two to meet with Gordon Brown, and what on earth Prince William thought he was doing, having a confab with Gordon Brown just as Gordon set up his latest campaign for the Union. Now, don't get me wrong, the former Prime Minister is entitled to publish as many vows, his undertakings, pledges, reformations of the Union, plans for federalism, and he publishes about one a month over the last few years, and he's perfectly entitled to do that, and he's also perfectly entitled to meet Prince William, as is any other citizens who's invited to do so. But we'd be very foolish indeed not to read the tea leaves in this sort of thing. In the run-up to 2014, for a whole range of reasons, and largely because I saw the argument for continuity of as many as possible of the social institutions in these islands, then we were extremely keen, as people would think proper and respectful, to keep the monarchy, the head of state, out of politics, and everybody agrees that I think that the Queen has done a marvellous job in a lifetime of service, and that should be recognised as such. There was in the campaign, as we now know, a brazen attempt by the Prime Minister Cameron, to involve the monarchy directly in politics, which was largely resisted by the palace, and whatever things were said were certainly not said in a way which had a direct or powerful influence in the campaign. But the Prime Minister certainly wanted to drag the monarchy into politics. So we should have no compunction and no hesitation about seeing in that meeting with Gordon Brown what seems to be the preparations for doing what is absolutely extraordinary, which would be to have a constitutional monarchy looking at and directly discussing aspects of the constitutional debate, which should of course be left to the people. It would be enormously wise of the royal family to follow basically what has been the Queen's example over her long reign, as to keep the monarchy over and above politics. And it does seem extraordinarily foolish to have a situation where it can even be said, admittedly by the Daily Mail, which is not necessarily the most accurate portrayal of information, but by the mainstream press in general, that somehow the monarchy, the future head of state, the panoply of the royal family has been somehow involved in the Scottish constitutional debate. I remember some years ago Professor Neil McCormack and then George Reid as presiding officer of the Scottish Parliament. Firstly, Professor Neil McCormack pointing out that the Queen was Queen not of Scotland but of Scots, because our monarchy has always been one established in consent. George Reid made exactly the same point when the Queen graced the Scottish Parliament at its opening of the new building, that Her Majesty was Queen of Scots. That is a position which is acknowledged as one of consent. It's not one that people expect to see ever directly involved in politics. That would undermine the whole basis of a constitutional monarchy. But what I'm saying basically in terms of reflecting on that is that it's quite clear that the forces of the Union, David Cameron previously, now his predecessor Gordon Brown, they're going to have no compunction about getting themselves organised and set for what they see coming as the next referendum campaign. The forces of the Union had a serious reverse in the Scottish elections. They made no progress whatsoever. In the case of the Labour Party, they went backwards at a great rate of knots. There is now a substantial majority of MSPs in the Scots Parliament in favour of independence. And now, thanks to the efforts of ALBA and indeed others, there's now an absolute majority in the list vote of people who supported independence in the recent elections. Therefore, that is a strong position of legitimacy for the independence case to be carried forward. It should be carried forward. It should be done with immediacy and urgency while our opponents are off balance. And that underlines the immediacy by which the campaign should be taken forward while our opponents are in disarray. It would be a matter of overconfidence and complacency to allow the Unionist forces to draw up their battleground for the next test of Scottish independence. They clearly are making their preparations. They're clearly laying the ground. I know from inside information I was given this week by a prominent Scottish National Party MP that the Tories at Westminster are surprised that they haven't faced that immediate constitutional challenge and are wondering what on earth is going on. Well, let's hope that what on earth is going on is the planning in order to bring this matter to a head, because our opponents are most certainly going to do that. And it would be unwise of us not to read the ruins and what we've seen over the last week and to take action to put forward our case, backed by the people, for Scottish independence, and the case put forward by ALBA to bring that matter forward with great urgency, to seize the moment, to strike while the iron's hot, to make sure that the mobilisation of people goes towards a target. I detect, and certainly it's indicated in the surge of ALBA membership, I detect a great enthusiasm for this matter among the people. We've got to make sure the same enthusiasm is prevalent among the leadership. And now with a reminder to sign up before the end of June to become a founder member of Scotland's fastest growing political party. Don't miss that opportunity. And then I assure you we'll get a conference hall large enough to contain all the ALBA membership who want to attend and vote at that historic inaugural conference of ALBA.